Good afternoon. This series of videos is called Healthcare Advocacy, where we address problems in the healthcare system in the U.S. and take actions to try and make a better system for all of us. Now, before we get started, let me point out that down below in the description block, the description area, is a hyperlink for today's Healthcare Advocacy newsletter. You can, of course, subscribe for free and have it delivered daily, but that newsletter contains the text for today's talk, together with all of the references and hyperlinks and actions that I'll mention. So let's first talk about prescription drugs. Americans pay significantly more for brand name drugs than people in most other countries. With Medicare set to begin historic price negotiations for 10 important prescription drugs, a new Commonwealth Fund study finds that even after estimated discounts, U.S. prices eclipse those in nearly every peer country. Among the findings, the list retail prices for the 10 selected drugs are, on average, 3 times higher in the U.S. compared to other high-income countries, and U.S. prices after estimated discounts and rebates are higher than nearly all the prices in those other countries, even before they take out discounts and rebates. So that's not good. That's terrible. Since we're comparing to the US, there is a graph that will be in the newsletter, and the US shows at 100%, and the next nearest country is Switzerland, and they're at 34% of the price in the US. Australia, which is the lowest one, is at 12% of the US cost. Can you believe it? Okay, now let me tell you, a common pharmacy industry excuse for the uber high prices in the US is that they need to charge so much so that they get money for research. Let me point out, that is a lie with a capital L. Most drugs are developed using federal research money in the US. You got it? Our taxes support their research, and then they take us to the cleaners. That's horrible. Here are some of the key takeaways from the study. The list retail prices for the 10 selected drugs are, on average, I mentioned, 3 times higher in the US than in other countries. Prices after discounts and rebates in the US, higher than almost all prices before discounts and rebates in peer countries, except for one, Xarelto, leaving significant room for further reductions in negotiations when compared with other countries. Of course, now look, if we had universal health care, we could negotiate the prices for all the prescription drugs, just like the rest of the industrialized world. I hate that healthcare in the US is caveat emptor. Oh, if you can look that up if you don't know what it means, or shoot me a note and I'll translate it for you. Let's talk about inhalers. The Hill, which is a news organ in the United States, is reporting, and of course the link is in the newsletter, that Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, and a group of Senate Democrats on this past yesterday, announced an investigation into the high cost of asthma inhalers. You know what? Those are super important. They provide immediate relief when people can't breathe. They are just lifesavers. Anyway, Sanders is chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, HELP, and he sent letters to the CEOs of the 4 biggest manufacturers of those inhalers sold in the US: AstraZeneca, Boehringer Ingelheim, GlaxoSmithKline, and Teva. And he demanded information and documentation on internal strategic communications, patient assistance programs, and the costs involved for manufacturing the inhalers. Like many other prescription drugs, the company's inhalers sell for hundreds of dollars in the US, but for only a fraction of the same price overseas. The companies charge between $200 and $600 each for their inhalers and they're typically purchased monthly. That $200 to $600 is in the US. Let me give you some examples. AstraZeneca has an inhaler, one of them, costs $645 in the US and $49 in the UK. One of the Boehringer Ingelheim inhalers costs $489 in the US, and get this, in France, $7. GlaxoSmithKline has a popular Advair HFA inhaler, Costs $319 in the US and $26 in England. If we had a marketplace where buyer and seller could negotiate a fair price between them, we'd all be better off. And let's face it, that's what capitalism is, buyers and sellers coming to terms on a price. Here, that's not what we have. We have a take it or leave it system that is made so broken by our health insurance. Anyway, let's take an action to try and correct this. Let's remind those people that are supposed to represent our interests in Congress that drug prices are bloated by drug companies and pharmacy benefit manager bribery schemes, and those are not in our interest. But a system of fairly negotiated prices is in our interest. You can, on your cell phone, text to 50409 the phrase SIGN, S-I-G-N, PXNAGP to send the email I'm going to read to you in a minute, or if you want, in the description box, you'll see a link that'll get you to your member of Congress and senators, and you can call them or email them, or just send this email. I'm your constituent, and I am outraged to have learned that the U.S. pays at least 300% more for the 10 drugs Medicare is going to negotiate than the next highest nation, Switzerland. We need to be able to get drug prices under control in the U.S., and the way to do it is to negotiate fair drug prices for all of us by having universal health care. I want you to start representing the interests of your constituents and not the drug companies and insurance companies. I want you to support and pass universal health care, like H.R. 3421. You owe it to your constituents. Thank you. Let me talk very, very briefly about nonprofit hospitals in the United States. There are approximately 3,000 or so of them. A recent Kaiser Family Foundation investigation into the financial health of nonprofit hospitals and medical centers found that about 90% of them were in really good shape. 3/4 of them had cash on hand to run for 150 to 180 days. That's amazing. There's a link to the full story in the newsletter. I got to tell you, I used to work in an industry, actually in the aerospace industry, where having that much cash on hand was a luxury. Most of the aerospace companies I'm familiar with, in order to make payroll and pay rent, they borrow money. These guys have got money in their pockets. It's amazing. Anyway, if we had universal health care with global budgets like H.R. 3421, then look, each hospital and medical center's infrastructure cost would be covered, bottom line. And we could spend all this valuable time talking about something else important. Okay, that's what I had for you today. Down below, like, share, subscribe. Remember, you can get a free subscription to Healthcare Advocacy's newsletter and have the emails delivered right to your inbox every morning. Have a good afternoon.